This is Excel 2016, Module 10, Part 1. We're going to look at different forms of what-if analysis that we can utilize in Excel. One of the key selling points of Excel is the ability to do this what-if analysis. I want to be able to look at data, change one or a couple of key facts, and see what change or what the resulting change will be. So we're going to start out, we're going to be working in our workbook called Cultivar. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to delete this extra thing here. All right, so we're on this income worksheet. Now the first thing you want to understand is the data you're looking at. So we're looking at basically an income statement. We've used the number of units that we produced and sold and the average price to generate how much money that will bring in for the company or how much revenue. We've also tried to determine variable expenses. Now in a manufacturing environment, variable expenses are the expenses that are going to vary directly with the number of units that I've produced. So for example, if each product I make takes $20 worth of steel and $15 worth of bolts, those are variable costs. If I produce 10,000 units, that cost will be a specific value. If it's 12,000, it's going to be 12,000 times that 155. So if I change the number of units that I produce, so instead of making 12,000, the variable costs are 2,700,000. If I changed it to 15,000, you'll notice that $155 and $70 worth of variable expenses changed. It changes directly in a one-to-one relationship how many units I produce. For every unit, it's going to cost me $155 of material and $70 to manufacture. So if I started with 1 unit, you would see it would be that $225. If I go up to 100 units, you can see it multiplied that value by 100. So I'm going to go back to the 12,000 that they had. The next segment of cost are fixed expenses. Many people think that this means they don't ever change. And that's not exactly what it means. What it means is they don't change in direct proportion to the units we produce. But at some point, they may have to change. You know, I think back to 2008 when we had this last recession. So as sales started to go down, variable costs were also declining. But at some point, I had to start letting people go. I had to start cutting back on miscellaneous expenses, maybe advertising. Because at some point, I had to realize that I could not keep functioning at the same level when sales weren't keeping up at that level. And so you started seeing employees, not that worked in the manufacturing, but that worked in the offices, getting let go, losing their jobs. You started seeing benefits being cut, things like that, to cut those fixed expenses. On the flip side of that, if we're in the middle of a boom and we're used to making 12,000 and all of a sudden we're selling 25 or 30,000, at some point we're going to have to hire more office people. We have to be able to process all those transactions and keep everything working well within the company. So we would have to increase those fixed expenses at some point. It's just not in direct proportion to our units produced, the way the variable expenses are. And then down here at the bottom, we're calculating the total revenues, total expenses, and coming up with what the net income would be. Now I want to keep this worksheet exactly the way it is. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to make a copy of this worksheet. Put it at the end. And we're going to call it Goal Seek. I'm going to use this worksheet to calculate my goal seek so we can see the results of some of these tools. So what if my goal is to find the number of units where the net income is equal to 0? So I'm going to put up here a formula that just says equal and references the net income cell. Now the net income is displayed up there. It's a little easier to see. So if I come in here and I said, okay, what happens if I produced 15,000 units? Okay, you can see my income went up. How about if I changed it to 9,000? So now I'm losing money. That's what that negative number means. So let's change it back to 12,000. And we know that somewhere between 12,000 and 9,000 is the point that we call the break-even point. That is the point where my total expenses is equal to my total revenue. And that's the first point I'm going to look for. So we're going to do a technique called Goal Seek. So we are going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and we are going to click on the net income cell. Then we're going to go to the Data tab. All of our what if analysis tools are on this tab. You'll see a button that says What If Analysis. Choose that drop-down arrow and choose Goal Seek. The limitation of Goal Seek is that you can only change one cell or one thing, and you can only set one cell to a certain value. So if I want the net income to be equal to 0, B28 is the cell where the net income is stored. I want to know how many units produced will take me to a value of 0, which is our break-even point. And then by changing the number of units produced, which is in B6. Then you're going to click OK. And you can see that it very quickly went through. When you see a dash like this, that means it's a 0. It's just number formatting that's causing that dash. It changed it to units produced of 9,273. So that's our goal seek. We get to set one goal, and then we get to determine one item to change.